Today on the show, the great Hollywood contraction is real, so what's going on? I went to a Pilates class and now everything hurts. Plus, for the first time in a very long time, we're opening the Kingston Chronicles. All that and more on 20th Century Boy. Now girls can listen too. Welcome to 20th Century Boy. My name is Pilates Mike, and this is the inside of my mind. Oh, welcome to another week. Great to be sitting down and recording another episode of 20th Century Boy, a podcast by me, Radio Mike, writer and producer from here in Melbourne, just trying to make his way through life. This is 20th Century Boy, the conversations you wish you were having about the stuff that no one else cares about, and that's what this podcast is all about. Wow. It's nearly June. Now that's crazy because I've been thinking for most of this year, like, oh, it's just the start of the year. The year's just bloody started. The year's just started. Suddenly, the year's half over or half started. Depends on if you're a glass half full, glass half empty kind of guy or girl. Got a fair bit to talk about today, guys. And wanted to start off, of course, by plugging the Patreon, patreon.com/RadioMike. Again, if this podcast is part of your weekly routine, your monthly routine, your daily routine, if any of my content is, please support me on Patreon, patreon.com/RadioMike. As I said, like most people, feeling a bit of cost of living. Now, that might be because I just got back from a holiday where I spent a fair bit of money, but at the same time, everything's just expensive. Like, I'm genuinely second-guessing every purchase I make. I'm like, do I really need this? And the answer is usually no. But I've been feeling, I'm going to be honest, I'm, again, turning 30 at the end of the year. I have been feeling this weird feeling, which I've been talking about with people, where at the moment, like, I probably have the least paid work I've ever had. I had a really good stream of work during my 20s. At the moment, I'm like, could probably have more. It's good because it means I can do more of my creative stuff and grow that, and that's obviously very cool. But yeah, I'm just worried with things getting expensive. Like, I'm trying to figure out what the next step is for me career-wise, and of course, I'd love to keep growing this creative brand as well. So yeah, if you have thought about subscribing to the Patreon, now would be a really helpful time for you to do it. But if you don't want to, that's also cool. I've been doing a bunch on the YouTube channel. Making short editorial videos, like 10-minute videos, and they've been going really well, getting in the thousands of views. South Park came back last week, and every time there's been a South Park episode, I do an analysis of the satire in South Park. Did one for the most recent episode that came out, which was all about Ozempic and weight loss drugs and the American healthcare system. Did really well on YouTube, got like 17,000 views, which was my best ever for one of those videos. So I'd love for you to go check out the YouTube. Did get a message from Radio Jago in the Discord. Feel free to join the Discord, by the way. There's chats in there all the time about movies and music and this podcast and other content I make and pretty much everything. So would love for you to jump in the Discord, chat to other listeners of the show. He said, great podcast, Radio Mike. Honestly, I'm a bit lazy with YouTube, so we'll head over. But I think if relevant, you should also rip into podcast form if possible. So I have been thinking about that, like ripping the audio from the YouTube videos and putting them on this feed. And then I'm like, does it clutter up the feed? But then it's like this feed becomes like the hub for all of my audio content, and I'll label it as like, this is like a mini episode, and that's pulled from my YouTube. I don't know if I'm going to do that or not, but there's heaps of content coming out on this feed anyway. There's a movie club tomorrow with Pat. We did Punch Drunk Love, the Adam Sandler movie from 2002. So make sure you watch that and catch up on the movie club around that. Next month's movie club is Being John Malkovich. So make sure you watch that in the meantime for next month. And Claire and I will hopefully be doing some world tour episodes about our Japan trip coming up soon. So stay tuned for those on this feed. Hey, I've been sometimes, and this is maybe just showing my age, on a Saturday night now, if Claire's working, I'll just go to my mum and dad's and just hang out at my mum and dad's. Pretty lame, but I'm just like, I'll just go hang out with them. Always have a laugh. And we've both of the last 2 weekends, we watch a bit of the footy, but then there's now an Australian version of Jeopardy that is on. And if you are not familiar with Jeopardy, it's like a very popular American quiz show, but it kind of has a twist, okay? And I'll explain that in a sec. But the Australian version of Jeopardy is very interesting. Stephen Fry hosts it. I'm a big Stephen Fry fan. He narrates the Harry Potter audiobooks, which I listen to fall asleep pretty much every night. And so Stephen Fry hosts it. I actually have a feeling that this Australian version of Jeopardy, which airs on a Saturday night, which is a weird time slot, I have a feeling they actually film it in the UK where Stephen Fry is based, and all the contestants on it are actually Aussies who live in England. Because I just think we'd know if Stephen Fry was in the country. Anyway, that's kind of beside the point. Jeopardy, and if you've listened to the pod for a while, you know I love trivia shows. I was even a contestant on Hard Quiz. Kind of want to go on this Jeopardy show. So I'm going to look into it, but I do have a feeling it's filmed in the UK, so I won't be able to. But I'm a big trivia fan. I'm a big quiz show fan. I love all that stuff. I'm a big trivia nerd. And Jeopardy is interesting stylistically because, and I didn't get any audio, but maybe I'll try and cut some in if I can be bothered. But it's kind of like reverse trivia in the sense that instead of answering the question, they kind of give you the answer and you have to answer with the question, which is kind of hard to get your head around and can be very confusing. But I'll give you an example that you could do for like, okay, so you might get the question, you might get the answer of like, I'm just trying to think of, okay, this is just something that I obviously would know about, but like this is what you would get asked. This yellow mouse has a penchant for electricity and is one of the most iconic of this monster collecting franchise, right? And then you'd buzz in and you would go, who is Pikachu, right? That's how Jeopardy works. Like you answer with the question. I'll give you another one, see if you can figure it out. Okay, again, up my alley. This Californian punk trio sang about small things and didn't know what age they were. Bzz, who are Blink-182, right? That's how it works. Anyway, the reason I bring this up, one is because I love it and I want to watch more episodes because I just find it very engaging and people seem very confused by it, but it's actually pretty easy to get your head around. Two, though, is just a funny story that I was watching it with Mum, who she was kind of making dinner, and she was sort of half watching, but I was sitting down watching it intently. And Mum didn't really understand what was going on, but me and Dad were just sitting there. And one of the clues was, again, see if you can guess it. I feel like this story isn't going to be as funny as it was in the moment, but I'm telling it anyway. One of the clues was, Margot Robbie played this real life ice skater in a movie in this movie or something like that. Or it was like Margot Robbie portrayed this real life ice figure skater in this movie. And then I go, what is I, Tonya? which was the answer. To which Mum, who's only half paying attention, just calls from across the room, it's a movie. So Mum like obviously wasn't listening or didn't understand the game. So she thought I had just out of nowhere asked to the room, what is I, Tonya? And she chimes in and goes, it's a movie. To which my dad then goes, oh, no. He was answering the question from the show. And then Mum still didn't get it and was like, yeah, well, he asked, what is I, Tonya? So I was just explaining to him, Tony, that it's a movie. And I was like, no, but Mum, we're watching Jeopardy and this was the clue and the answer was, what is I, Tonya? And she said, yes, and I told you I, Tonya is a movie with Margot Robbie. And then we realized just she was not engaged enough with the show to understand what was going on, and she couldn't even, like, she was just too busy, which is fair enough, and she didn't get it, but I just thought it was really funny. Just the rapidness of which I was like, what is I, Tonya? Like, you know, I was yelling at like an answer at trivia. What is I, Tonya? And Mum just goes, it's a movie. I just found that very, very funny. Very, very funny. Hopefully you did too. Hey, I did my first ever Pilates class. Me and Claire, we're trying to get fit. We're trying to actually be fit. And I've never done Pilates before. So Claire's like, come and do my Pilates class. I was like, yeah, okay, whatever. Thinking Pilates was like really easy. Anyway, we get into the Pilates room. I've always known that Pilates exists. I've never known what it is. Over my life, many, many people have been like, I'm doing Pilates. And I was like, what actually is that? What do you actually do in Pilates? Because I had no idea. Anyway, it's just a lot of like stretching and holding positions and muscle movement and stuff like that. But we also were doing hot Pilates. Hot as in temperature hot. So it was like a 36-degree room in the dark. And I was like, as soon as it started, I was like, this is going to be so embarrassing for me because I actually have no idea what Pilates is or if I'm capable. I'm very out of shape right now. Anyway, it gets started. Thankfully, you know, it's in a dark, hot room and you can't really see anyone. Like, you can only really see the person next to you. And I realized I had no idea how to do any of the stuff. So I was just copying the girl in front of me. But it was actually a very positive experience because because it was dark, no one could really see that I sucked. So no one could really like laugh at me. And even the instructor couldn't be like, no, do it like this. Nah, you're doing it wrong, which would have been embarrassing and made me never want to do Pilates again. So now I'm going to book in for another class. And I will become Pilates Mike. Funnily enough, it kind of bridges into, I don't even know if I have this sting still. Is this it?
Get your brain ready, because it's Mike's big year of learning stuff.
It is supposed to be Mike's big year of learning stuff, which all started out at the start of the year when I was learning a few close-up magic tricks, which was obviously kind of cool. But it kind of stopped. I haven't really been. I was going to learn one new thing a month, starting with like the magic tricks, then how to use a barbecue, then how to use a tie, because apparently I went to private school for 7 years but never learned how to actually tie a tie in my entire life. And Claire even suggested I should learn how to fold clothes because apparently I'm really bad at that, but I haven't learned anything. So I'm going to treat Pilates as Mike's big year of learning because now I've learned what Pilates is and how to do Pilates. And the craziest thing about the Pilates class was literally everything really, really hurt a lot after the Pilates class, which is normal. And maybe that's a sign that it worked. But seriously, I could barely walk for like 2 days. Walking, even up small sets of stairs, was extremely difficult for me, which maybe shows how out of shape I am. But, you know, basically all I wanted to say was I've done Pilates and my mum had a funny response to Jeopardy. Anyway, exciting times because we haven't done this for a very long time. It's just amazing that we are finally able to do this again.
The Sean Kingston Chronicles.
Yeah, it's the Sean Kingston Chronicles. Now, who is Sean Kingston? I hear you asking if you're newish to the podcast. And by complete coincidence, I talked about Sean Kingston last week on the podcast, not knowing that we were about to open up the Sean Kingston Chronicles. Sean Kingston, of course, responsible for the hit song Me Love by Sean Kingston, which for a long time was the song of the show. The official song of this show was Me Love by Sean Kingston. He is a Jamaican hip-hop singer who became quite big when I was at school, when he was quite young. Even did a song with Justin Bieber called Eeny Meeny, and after a while quickly faded from the spotlight, I guess you could say. But I love Sean. I'm a big Kingston fan. You know, Beautiful Girls, probably his most famous song. You're way too beautiful, girl. That song, we love it. We absolutely love it. And, you know, for a while, every week we would kind of check out what Sean Kingston had been up to and open up the Sean Kingston Chronicles. And they haven't been open for a long time, mainly because Sean Kingston has been really out of the press. But, you know, we were following him a lot. Someone even at one point wrote in and said they were watching The Sweet Life of Zack and Cody on Disney Plus, and Sean Kingston was in one of the episodes. So then the next week, I did a review of Sean Kingston on The Sweet Life of Zack and Cody. That all must have been ages ago. This podcast has been going for so long. Anyway, to my surprise, Sean Kingston pops up in the press again this week.
Rapper Sean Kingston and his mother both taken into custody, allegedly stealing more than $1 million.
The team at TMZ showing the moments cops confronted Sean Kingston in California after his South Florida home was raided.
We've come a long way from love songs. This is the California jail where Sean Kingston is being held on a Florida warrant.
Just an insane case. I'm going to read you a little bit about what King has been up to. So Sean Kingston's South Florida home was raided by a SWAT team, and both him and his mother have been arrested, okay? And apparently they have been involved in a months-long theft and fraud scheme. This is absurd. Sean Kingston is now 34. His mother is 61. They face 10 charges of grand theft, fraud, and criminal use of personal identification information. The warrant accuses the singer and his mother of stealing more than $1 million of money, jewelry, and other goods from several businesses from October through March. The warrant alleges that the mother and son swindled more than $480,000 worth of jewelry from an individual, a Cadillac worth nearly $160,000, and furniture that cost upward of $86,000. Kingston and his mother also allegedly stole more than $200,000 from Bank of America and more than $100,000 from First Republic Bank. Now, this is just absolutely absurd. He also did an Instagram story saying, "People love negative energy. I am good and so is my mother. My lawyers are handling everything as we speak." Now, a fascinating change for the good guy, cheeky boy image we knew Sean Kingston as when he was young, okay? We knew him as just that cheeky boy. He loved chicks. He loved just, getting around and about, singing songs, hanging out with Justin Bieber. And now he's facing prison time, Kinger. And it's a big shame because we love the Kinger, and we obviously will be following this case very closely in the Sean Kingston Chronicles. It was, earlier this year we did a segment called Frank Check, all about Frankie Muniz. I feel like Frank Check was the spiritual successor to the Sean Kingston Chronicles, but if anyone does have news on where Sean Kingston is at the moment, would love to know. But that's another edition of the much long-awaited return of
The Sean Kingston Chronicles.
Yeah, great. Hey, recently I've talked about my social media addiction, how I've axed social media from my phone, but I want to come clean. Unfortunately, I have another addiction, and it's something that I want to be really open and honest with, and it's only sprung up really quickly, and I'd like to play some sad music. Yeah. So, I want to confess first to you guys, the listeners, and this does happen every once in a while with me, where a game comes out, like a video game comes out, and I start playing it, and almost without noticing, I become addicted. And then even when I realize I'm addicted, I can't stop. And that is fundamentally the problem. The insidious nature of addiction is that even if you know you're addicted, you can't really stop being addicted. And I'm addicted to this game called Pokerogue. Now, if you're not familiar with Pokerogue, it is a fan-made browser-based Pokemon game that is very addictive, evidently. It is endless Pokemon battles where you just non-stop battle different Pokemon and trainers and catch different Pokemon. Sort of like normal Pokemon, but just endless. I'm addicted. I've been staying up till midnight in bed playing it when I should be trying to sleep and have a healthy lifestyle. I realize now that my addiction has spiraled out of control. even right now, as I'm doing this podcast, I actually wish I was playing Poke Rogue. I am fundamentally addicted to this game, and I don't know what to do because I can't beat it. It gets really hard towards the end. I've gotten up to the final boss a few times with a really strong Pokemon team that I thought could really easily beat the final boss, but I can't beat him. In fact, he beats me. The final boss is called Eternatus. It's a poison and dragon type Pokemon, which is a rough combo for anyone who plays the game. And it's difficult because I come in with a really strong team. Takes a few hours to get to the final boss, and I'm like, I've done it a few times, and I go, this is going to be the one where I beat him. But every single time he beats me in what can only be described as an uncontrollable onslaught from this final boss character. And each time I think I'm going to win, but I don't, and then I just start again and take another few hours when I really should be doing anything productive, to be honest. And as I said, this happens to me with games every now and then. For a while, I was playing a game called Dead Cells that also had me very addicted. I also got quite addicted to Hogwarts Legacy when that video game came out towards the start of last year. I don't really know what the solution is to this addiction. I think I just have to beat the game, but that's very, very hard to do. But thankfully, it's called Poke Rogue because it's based on roguelike games. And, well, the idea of roguelike games are kind of to play on your addiction, where, like, each time you play, you kind of get a little bit stronger. And therefore, eventually, you should be able to beat the final boss, which I'm hoping to do very, very soon. So, if you do find yourself at work and you use a computer at work and you want to do something that is more fun than work, I actually don't recommend playing Poke Rogue, the new Pokemon fan game that is taking the internet by storm, because I think you'll become addicted to, and that's just something I wouldn't wish upon anybody else. Thank you for listening, and I apologize that we had to get into serious territory in this episode. We don't like to do that much, but the reality is that I am addicted to Poke Rogue, and it's been really, really fun. I might actually make a YouTube video about it because I've been really enjoying it. Cut the music. On another note, though, and this, funnily enough, this links back to Pilates. I was listening to Osher Ginsberg's pod, which I listened to a fair bit. He kind of does two things. He does like a weekly interview with someone, and then he just does like a weekly 15-minute episode of him just kind of talking about something. And I find I personally gravitate more to the podcast where he's just talking about something with himself, just solo. I really like solo pods and talk back. I really like that kind of thing. And Osher was talking about how he was at a Pilates class, like me. I'm so much like Osher. What the hell? And he noticed that the woman next to him in the class was constantly, while doing Pilates, looking at notifications on her Apple Watch that were coming up. And that he was just this is really the point we're at now in which that happens, and you just you just respond to notifications at all time.
I am in a Pilates class, and the lady on the mat next to me kept checking her smartwatch. We're going to have a grown-up chat about phones, watches, and notifications. When that notification goes off and essentially makes you perform an action that you otherwise were not going to perform at that point in time, who's really in charge of your life? It's not you. I'm not just making this up. There is a huge amount of science around notifications and how much they're messing up our thinking, our lives, our connection with other people. The science is frankly staggering. You do not need a weather app telling you that tomorrow will be cooler than 15 degrees. No, that information is not important enough to interrupt a moment between you and your lover or your family or your kids. No, every time you do that, essentially you're letting other people decide what it is that you pay attention to. Wonderfully though, we can turn them off. I would encourage you to do it. I'd love to know how you went.
And of course, I'm on this social media detox, which I'm talking about. But I actually, I honestly realized that buying an Apple Watch, I think, was probably the worst decision, like the worst purchase I've ever made, because I spent so much money on like the top new Apple Watch. I think I spent like $800, which is an excessive amount of money for what I got. And I realized that because for a long time I was like, why would I need an Apple Watch? My phone has a step counter on it if I want to measure my steps, all this stuff. And I don't need one. I never even like wearing watches. I'm not a watch guy anyway. It's not exactly a fashion point, okay? But I've noticed with Apple are very, very good at making you feel like you're missing out. That's what Apple does really well. They make you feel like if you don't have all their stuff, then you're missing out. And to be honest, I love Apple. Was a PC guy for a long time. I love Apple. I've got iPhone, AirPods. I use a Mac Mini. I've got a MacBook Pro. I've got 2 Apple TVs. Like, I've always loved Apple. I had an iPod back in the day. And the watch was like the first one where I was like, I'm not getting that. That's stupid. I've got an iPad as well. And ended up caving and getting the watch and just almost instantly regretted it. Because I realized that I was just wearing this watch. I'd literally go for a walk down to the supermarket and be like, oh, it looks like you're working out. I was like, oh, yeah, I guess. And I just didn't find it necessary. I remember because I'm back in seeing a psych now. First psych session I was in, I was wearing my Apple Watch, kept getting notifications. So I'd just be stopping and looking at them while I'm in a psych session. I was like, what the hell? And now I just haven't worn it and it's just sitting there. And I've just wasted all this money on it and it's just not doing anything. Because honestly, there is nothing that the Apple Watch does that your phone doesn't do. And, you have to even pay more money to your telco to register the Apple Watch to have cellular data anyway. I kind of used it a bit for like sending texts at first and doing quick phone calls. But even still, I just don't think it's that good a thing. And Osher made this really good point in his podcast where it was like, would you in any other circumstance accept, like if it wasn't your watch, would you accept someone tapping you on the shoulder every 2 minutes while you're doing something to tell you something? Because that's what a notification is. And basically what the Apple Watch is just another avenue for you to get notifications and for people to get in contact with you when you're doing something else. And as humans, we are not designed to be 24-hour accessible. We are not designed to be reached all times. And there's all these like selling points that they use and people like, because I would ask people, what do you do with the Apple Watch? They're like, oh, I just track my exercise and I get like, exercise like results and it tracks my fitness and my steps. You never go back and actually look at them. Like I've never gone, I'm going to look at my stats on my health app. I just like let it do it and then I never look at it again. I honestly regret buying it. I kind of want to sell it. It's new. So maybe I'm putting out here, if you want to buy an Apple Watch, I'll sell it to you with a good deal. Because I honestly don't want it. I don't, and I know now I don't want another thing to keep me like hooked to my phone. And the watch is the next step from technology to be like, just go straight. Like the next step from the watch is it's now the Neuralink and it's implanted in your brain and messages just go straight to your brain. And that is not a world that I want to live in. So I just haven't been using my Apple Watch at all. It's really going to waste. I really regret it. I regret buying it. And I just think like, again, very curious to watch the societal push away from social media and notifications that is just happening increasingly at the moment. And honestly, update on like not having Instagram on my phone, not having TikTok. Do not miss it at all. I check it in the morning on my computer to check my DMs and stuff, see if anyone's reached out. Maybe I'll like a couple photos that I see and then I turn it off. I don't miss it on my phone. admittedly, I have filled the time playing Poke Rogue, but I actually think that's a better use of my time because it stimulates my brain much more than Instagram, which is just disposable shit, and TikTok, which is more disposable shit. And now I'm watching more YouTube, and I'm watching more I guess, the other night, and this kind of keys into the next thing, I just watched with Claire the Queen's Gambit, the chess show, which I realize I'm very late to, but I just watched the first episode. Phone was away, and I just watched it, and I was just I just was glued to the screen. And I didn't even feel like the pinging of something being like, you got to check your phone, check your watch, check your phone, check your watch. I just was watching it, and I'm like, this is good. I like this show. It's good. It's entertaining. So yeah, more of that. That's what I want now, I think. Final thing for today, which kind of links in to this, which is that they're calling it the Great Hollywood Contraction, which is this, I think it's multifaceted, but one, across the entire world in this industry, in the media industry, the broad media industry, so many businesses are laying off staff. I just saw on LinkedIn, Pixar laid off 150 staff. At the start of last year or end of last year, Spotify laid off a lot of staff. Everyone is laying off staff. I'm seeing it, locally. I'm seeing it internationally. That's a big thing. And my sort of discussion around that is that there are so many things now competing for your attention, and there is so much content out there that everyone is trying to make the next big thing, and not everything can be the next big thing. So then what happened is during COVID, I think all these media companies hired lots of people to make lots of stuff, lots of content, because everyone was consuming. Now, it's flattening out. They're realizing they're not making any money, so they're letting all their stuff go. That's why there's no jobs in this industry at the moment. It's getting really, really tough. And I find that fascinating. The other thing, though, is a lot of movies are flopping and performing underwhelmingly at the box office lately. Furiosa is the latest one that has sparked this discussion, which is, I guess, part of the Mad Max world. Features Chris Hemsworth, AAA actor, has not performed well at all. In fact, performed very poorly at the box office. Similar movies that have not performed well include the new Ryan Reynolds film, which is The Fall Guy, I think it's called, has not performed well commercially. And John Krasinski's film If, which I actually went to see, has not performed well either. Ryan Reynolds is also in that. And, when you've got these big stars and Garfield as well, which apparently was terrible, has not performed well. That has Chris Pratt. Big movies where you've got Chris Hemsworth, Chris Pratt, Ryan Reynolds, John Krasinski, when they're not performing well. This is a really interesting time for media and in this case study, cinema. And here's the thing. I think the death of cinemas is coming, or at least traditional cinemas is coming. I'd be curious to know people's thoughts on this, but we went to see If in Gold Class just as a date night, me and Claire, and as they were taking us into the Gold Class, I was like, oh, how's business here? Because we went to a cinema called the Rivoli Cinema in Camberwell, which is probably one of the only kind of dedicated cinemas in Melbourne now. A lot of them are in shopping malls or attached to shopping strips. This one's just the Rivoli Cinema. And the guy said, honestly, it's not great. And he said, we're hoping Furiosa brings in a lot of people, which now, in hindsight, it didn't. And I was curious about that. Saw two friends of the show discussing it on Twitter. They were friend of the show, Pugapilla, who is a YouTuber that I'm mates with online and have met him a few times. And of course, friend of the show, Dave Lee Down Under. Pugapilla did this take essentially about Furiosa, where he essentially said, no one is going to go see a movie nowadays if they know it's going to come to streaming and digital within 2 weeks. Good take. Really interesting take that I want to discuss. Dave Lee also responded to that, and he said, the answer literally is as simple as this. No matter how far you try to look into statistics or break down cinema ticket costs or psychoanalyze the human condition or whatever, this is the very simple answer. And I agree. And for a while, I think the fatigue for movies was coming from franchises and universes and, you know, particularly Marvel and like all of this kind of, all of these movie universes that you had to know everything. People are just like, I don't care anymore. I've lost interest. I'm not going to go to the movies. Of course, the rise of streaming explains it as well. And that's what these guys are getting at. Because when I was a kid, back in the 90s and the 2000s, like if you missed a movie in cinemas, you had to wait like probably 6 months at least for it to come out on VHS and DVD. Then you could go to Blockbuster or Video Easy here in Australia and rent it on DVD and watch it. But if you missed it in cinemas, like you missed it for a while. It didn't come out. You couldn't watch it at home for a very, very long time after the movie came out. So if you missed the cinema run, you're waiting 6 months. Like I remember my mum say, like we were tossing up between two movies and my mum was like, oh, we'll just watch the other one when it comes out in 6 months on DVD. We'll just rent it, right? So back then you had to go to the cinemas, but also back then you'd want to go to the cinemas because aside from, I guess, DVDs and video games, like home entertainment wasn't what it is now, where you can just like stream any movie really on your laptop in bed. Like if you wanted to watch a movie, you had to go to the movies. And often on school holidays, like what you would do with your friends is you'd be like, let's go to the shopping center and then watch a movie. And you'd get McDonald's in the food court and then you'd go watch Big Mama's House 2 in cinemas and then you'd walk home and you'd talk about it. And that's what you would do. But now there's so many variables here. One, yes, it's streaming. A lot of these movies come to streaming very quickly after their cinema release. I think that, and I wonder if that, it's interesting because I feel like what I felt like they were doing is when they could see that it was going to flop at the box office, they'd rush it to streaming. That was happening for a bit, but now I feel like it's on streaming very quickly. Like Fall Guy was in cinemas, and now I'm pretty sure you can get it on streaming. It hasn't been in cinemas for very long. And of course, it removes the incentive to go, and this is, now I'm going to call this next thing the cheapening of movies. And I don't mean the price, I mean the cheapening of movies and reducing them to just content. Because now with TikTok and Insta and YouTube and an array of short burst content, right? People don't even necessarily see movies, I don't think, as like a thing that you're supposed to engage with. Like cinema is something you engage with and you are focused on. Now I think people see movies as background noise we put on Netflix while we sit on the couch and go on our phones and look at Instagram. That's what I think movies actually are now, and TV shows as well. So I think the idea of going to a cinema and sitting there and not going on your phone for two hours is really hard for new generation. Like, to me, whenever I go to a movies, like I for a while I was like, the movies is one of the only time where I just don't go on my phone, because that's kind of how I was brought up. Like, you didn't watch, if you were in a cinema, you didn't go on your phone, you watched the movie, okay? Whereas if you're at home on the couch, you just like, you're chilling, you're even like, you're walking into the other room, you might be doing your washing or doing the dishes while the movie's on, you're talking to your partner or your friends or your housemates or whatever, you're doing all this stuff while the movie's on. The movie is just content in the background. And that is like the cheapening of movies as cinema to movies as just like background content or content that we have on as noise, okay? So that's why I think a lot of these movies are failing, because, and I remember someone telling me, it might have actually been Dave Lee, friend of the show, on Twitter, talking about how he went to a movie premiere, because, you know, sometimes us hashtag influencers or content creators get invited to these preview screenings and you know, we go and watch the movies. I think he was saying that he went to whatever the movie was, he went to the preview screening recently, and the person in front of him was like an influencer woman who, you know, looked maybe like a Gen Z or millennial or something like that. And the whole time the movie was on, she was just on her phone looking on Instagram at like the engagement on her post that she did about being at the movie with the media wall and everything, right? So she didn't actually care about the movie. She just cared that she had been invited to a premiere of a movie or to a preview screening of a movie that she could show people. And I've done that too. Like, I've taken photos at the premieres and been like, oh, I even did Mike's big year of premieres, which I think was like a bit different to that because I actually cared about the movies and would often make content about them. But I think the cinema as we know it is really disappearing because movies aren't as valued for their, I guess, cinematic, for their cinematic prowess anymore. And I think about like, the last time I went to the cinemas, as I said, was in Gold Class. I think Gold Class is a pretty enjoyable experience. Like, you get food delivered in the movie, you get some cocktails. It's nice. It's very expensive, but it's nice. Before that, I don't know if I even remember when the last movie I saw in cinemas was. And of course, there's the addition of like home theaters being really good now. Like, you can invest in really good home theater, but I don't think the average person has like good speaker setup and good, necessarily good video output and all of that stuff. But I just wonder how cinemas kind of revamp, because even like Pixar movies during COVID went straight to streaming, and I think parents just put them on as background, right, to entertain their kids during COVID. And now, ever since COVID ended, they've gone back to cinemas, but they haven't performed well at all. And I think it's just easier for a parent with kids to park their kids in front of the TV to watch a Pixar movie than to take them to the cinemas, spend the money, have to deal with them like running around and being uncontrollable and noisy and loud in the shopping center, in the cinema and all that stuff. That it's just a pain in the ass to go to the cinema with kids now. Like, why would you even want to do that when you know they've got every Pixar movie and every Disney movie on Disney Plus anyway? Just put it on the TV. They can sit at home while you clean up the house and do all the chores. I don't know. I'm really worried about it because I love the movies. I love cinema. I love going to see movies in cinemas, and I'm just very curious about, I don't know, what the future is for those industries, and it's a little bit disappointing. Anyway, let's wrap up with this.
The plug.
Harry Potter and the Boys is up. Another great episode with Sam Garlap. Go and binge that series. It's very, very bingeable, and it's the funniest stuff I do. I want to plug friend of the show, Cambo. If you've been listening to Movie Club, you may have heard Cambo on the March edition of Movie Club, which was The Mummy. I guested on Cambo's podcast, which is called Reddit on Reddit. Reddit, as in I read it on Reddit. Reddit on Reddit, and they do this segment called Podnapping, where they do a game or like segment from someone else's podcast on there. So I actually brought back a segment we used to do on this podcast a very long time ago called Lost in Translation, where I spit out song lyrics. I spit song lyrics into Google Translate and translate it like 15 times, and then spit it back out in English, and you have to guess what it is. I've been wanting to bring it back for a while, so this felt like a good opportunity. So there's like 5 Lost in Translations I do with them. Link in the description to this pod, and hopefully I'll bring that back next week. And I'll put a grab of it here. The game is called Lost in Translation. I take famous song lyrics from a song that like everyone knows, like a well-known song.
Yeah.
I spit it into Google Translate and translate it through 15 different languages and then back to English. Okay?
Okay. Awesome.
He fell off my tower and I was fine. I loved everyone, so I had no choice but to leave. How does a kiss start and end? As it is.
Oh, God. He fell off my tower. I reckon, and I was fine. Did that survive the lyrics?
The
too?
I was fine is pretty similar to the original as well.
Yeah, for some reason that was like sticking with me as something that was...
Tower has not, like, there's another object mentioned there, and it's not falling off that object. It's
right
coming out of that object.
Oh, this is The Killer's Mr. Brightside.
He fell off of my tower and I was fine. I loved everyone, so I had no choice.
He's got it.
How does it just start and end?
From there, I'd love for you to check out my blog, radiomike.substack.com. I'll be doing a blog post they're going up on Sunday mornings now, Sundays at 8 a.m. So I'll be doing a blog post for this week. And then the YouTube channel, subscribe, check out my videos. I've got a video up, should be up today or tonight, on why I think Ice Age is underrated. I recently did a video about why the Curb Your Enthusiasm finale was amazing. And of course, I did a video review of the new South Park episode. I've done videos on like recent Simpsons episodes, all pop culture stuff and geeky stuff. I know you'll love it. Thank you so much for listening, for watching, for doing all that. Patreon.com/Radio Mike if you want to support. My name's been Radio Mike. This has been The Inside of My Mind. I'll catch you next week for another episode of this spiffing podcast. See you later.
Inside